Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of GameHammer Daily, and today we're asking the question, what if you took one of those fun racing slot car games from the 70s and put it on a computer from the 80s? It's Scalextric on the Amstrad CPC, let's take a look at it. In 1987, board game converters Leisure Genius brought us a simulation of what it felt like to build a track and race tiny electric cars on that track, all from the comfort of your computer chair. It's Scalextric, and at the time, I thought it was pretty brilliant. The game at its core is a simple racing game where very little happens on screen. The background scrolls in an early form of parallax scrolling to simulate movement, and the cars are barely animated, with just a white line on the wheels bobbing up and down in order to make it appear like the tyres are rolling. The road moves from left to right now and again, but aside from that, the game is pretty much stationary in terms of screen real estate. So why did I like this game so much as a kid? Well, the answer is simple. You can make your own tracks and then race your friends on those tracks. Please locate the start of the track. Let's say right in the middle. Horizontal. I'm going to want a long bit. Then let's have a banked curve. Clockwise? No, we want to go. Yes, that's what we want. We're going to make a massive corner. Then we're going to try desperately to try and line this thing up. Whatever kind of track you want to make, you can build it in Scalextric, providing you stay within the confines of the editable area on the screen. And the game isn't all that great at telling you what that editable area is, by the way. You'll have to learn that by trial and error. When I was a kid, I used to spend a lot of time using the Scalextric track layout manual to build replica racing courses such as Silverstone and Brands Hatch. I remember trying to replicate those on this game, and it wasn't always possible because of the size limitations on the track layout screen. That was always a disappointment, but you could make simplified versions of the famous tracks if you put your mind to it, so there was that. When I came back to this game as an adult, I could have sworn the manual that came with it included some example tracks to replicate the track manual from the real-life Scalextric. It seems I was misremembering where I'd found those track layouts that I tried to follow as a child, however, as the game itself comes with no example tracks. You are literally thrown into this without a guide. That's not great in my view, but it won't stop you enjoying yourself if you take the game for what it is. Scalextric the game attempts to replicate the fun of building your own racetracks using Scalextric parts in real life. And for the most part, it does a pretty good job of it. It's a fun racing game where you can build replicas of the famous courses, and you can also just throw a load of twists and turns together to produce a course of your own making if you fancy doing that. Oh, now we're doing both at the same time. This won't work. This won't work at all. Oh my goodness. I want to say that the sky's the limit, but it's not. As a kid, I inherited my dad's hand-me-down Scalextric track to play with and race against all of my friends. He had been a big fan of Scalextric when he was a kid, so he had a huge amount of this stuff, with complex track design parts such as bridges and raised curved shunts to keep the tracks in place. He had the trackside decorative pieces, including the spectator stands and the figures to place around the course. None of that stuff is present in this game. Not even all of the different types of track that you could use on a real Scalextric course has made it into the game. Anything that stops the course being a flat track is not included, so bridges and high-speed banked corners are all out of the question. While as a kid this didn't matter because the fun was in making your own tracks to race on, when I've come back to it as an adult and the realisation of just how limited the track options are has hit home, it really does dampen the mood. What makes the game even more limiting, as if all of what we've just talked about wasn't enough, is that there doesn't appear to be a way of racing against the computer. You have to have a second player to be able to enjoy this game, otherwise you're just racing against yourself with a second player car sitting at the starting line. It's just not great, but there are ways around this if you're inventive enough. Oh my goodness! This is difficult. Wow, this is really difficult. Oh, and those are the only cars that you have in the game. There are no options for changing vehicles, you just get those two hardly animated cars to race. That's another major part of Scalextric that's just gone out the window. When I was a kid, I loved racing my dad's old blue Mini Cooper car that he bought sometime in the 70s against the modern late 80s Ford Cosworth racing car which I bought with some birthday money because I really enjoyed Scalextric at the time. You can't do any of that in this game. You have to stick with the two basic cars, which represent the basic two cars that you would get as pack-in vehicles when buying a starter pack of Scalextric. I've been quite harsh on the game so far, but there are some good sides to it. The racing engine is pretty well implemented. The track moves at quite a pace and racing feels pretty fluid. There are a lot of racing games on the CPC and several of them are truly brilliant. This is a reasonable early attempt, I mean it came out in 1987 as I recall, but the fluidity of the racing means that Scalextric actually competes very well against some of the later and arguably far more accomplished racing games in terms of the feel of speed it gives you and the fluidity of the gameplay. If you have a friend to play against, you can have a lot of fun with Scalextric, building your own tracks to race on and then seeing who can stick to the racing lines the best. It can be a fun game in that respect, but you have to bear in mind the fact that this is a pretty simplistic game at the end of the day with a lot of limitations. But if you do keep those limits in mind, it's still possible to have a lot of fun with this old game from the later days of the Amstrad range. And there you are, not the best game ever but far from the worst. It's got its good points and a fair few detractions as well. But at the end of the day, I did have a lot of fun with it. I had a lot of fun with it when I was a kid as well, so there's something there for young and old if you're prepared to give it a chance and take it at what it is. That's all we've got time for today, so thank you very much for watching. I hope you did like this. If you did, remember to click that like button and share with your friends so that they'll know a good game when they see it, and do subscribe for future videos because there will be more in the future. But until next time, I've been Kirk-Robinson, you've been watching GameHammer Daily, and I'll see you later.